Welcome to the Shared Practices podcast. We have today an amazing guest who is kind of fresh off their journey of having bought and run a practice for the first time ever. These interviews, this is like the essence of shared practices because just this morning before this call, I had a conversation with a dentist outside of Chicagoland. He's like looking for a practice. He's nervous. He's thinking about it. He's feeling overwhelmed. And I like talked him through some really high level stuff. And then I was like, but at the end of the day, as soon as you find something that you're like, no, this is interesting, just hop on the phone with Suzanne and get her to look at it because the difference between buying a lemon and buying a ready to go practice is night and day. So I want to welcome today Dr. Brian Belsterling to the show. I think I didn't butcher your name. Is that correct?
No, that was correct. You got it. You got it there.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Welcome, man.
Yeah. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Cool. Well, I purposely like didn't ask your story beforehand because we're just
Yeah.
going to talk about this live.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about yourself. Where do you live? Where'd you go to dental school, and when did you graduate?
Yeah, I'll start with the quick life story here. So I was born and raised in Pittsburgh. I went to undergrad at University of Pittsburgh, continued through dental school there. I did a 1 year GPR at the Washington, D.C. Veterans Hospital before coming back home to the Pittsburgh area.
How was it? Like honest, how was it? Pretend like your program director will never ever hear this interview.
I thought it was great. There are some unique benefits and difficulties to working at a federal hospital.
Hmm.
All of the veterans who qualify for coverage, pretty much get 100%. So there's no financial limitations to what you're able to treatment plan. So it gave me a greater sort of scope of perspective. And I also met a lot of excellent clinicians on the way who
Okay.
still remain friends and a great support system. So actually, yeah, I really would recommend residency based on program and goals.
Cool. No, and sorry, I always get on a little tangent there. I wrote an article for Dental Town. This is like before anything ever dental school because that was the problem I was facing. Do I do a 1 year AEGD?
Yeah,
Do I do a 2 year AEGD? And this is a total tangent. My hypothesis was reach out to the current program directors, get the contact info of current residents, have a list of procedures that you want to learn out of it,
yeah,
ask the current residents, are you actually getting
yeah,
reps doing these things? And that's the formula for evaluating a program before you get in. So it sounds like,
yeah,
federal funding means good
yeah.
things, it means weird things. And sometimes you can get a lot of dentistry done, and sometimes you got to jump through a lot of weird hoops.
Yeah, my number one goal in residency was not necessarily to get repetitions of bread and butter dentistry because that was going to happen one way or the other. I wanted hands-on implant placement, which I was
Cool.
able to get at residency, and that was like a key determining criteria. And if you have that kind of goal in mind, I think residency can be productive.
Yeah, and that I love that you had a specific outcome. And implants are one of those that like you just need to get over the hump of the
Yeah,
first 10, 20,
yeah,
30. Having done them with a mentor at your back,
yep,
literally guiding
yep,
you through, just gives you confidence to just keep going with your implant education. And that's just the beginning. So I
yeah.
love that you had that. Remind me, what year did you graduate and what year?
I graduated in 2017.
Okay, cool. So then after that, what were your initial plans on ownership? How soon did you want to own and what were your goals?
Yeah, so I was pretty motivated on ownership right out of residency, but I knew I kind of wanted to step back into the area, get back to Pittsburgh, do an associateship for a little bit, and then maybe start the search to find a practice. What happened, I got into an associateship. It was at a Medicaid practice, and that was kind of before I knew what that meant. The practice style wasn't necessarily for me. I think I lasted about 8 months there before a better opportunity arose.
But
Um,
you got faster is what
oh, I
you
got
did.
faster.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and speaking of implant placement and looking to get into that, the first step is getting comfortable with surgical extractions. At speed and at volume, and a lot of reps were had there. So it's it was beneficial. All my experiences have been building on something greater. But I did find an associateship at a really excellent practice in the area, kind of a mega group practice,
Okay.
like three full-time GPs, part-time endo, and the owner doc was part-time doing Invisalign only. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and it kind of gave me, I always kind of had the drive for practice ownership, but there's definitely some borrowed inspiration there from that associateship. It was pretty eye-opening as to, what's possible.
I love that. Well, and sometimes people assume like they've only ever been in single doctor practices themselves. The majority of dentists are single doctor practice owners, and it's awesome. It's great. But to have practiced in a multi doctor practice and just like see it operate from the inside
Yeah.
is an incredible opportunity. Even like even if it was a DSO, like there's something around like, oh, this is doable. Yeah, it's chaotic at times. I could do this better, and like your eyes are forever opened with that possibility. So I don't know. Was there any major takeaways from that time period?
Um, that's a good question. I would say it's really just sort of gaining perspective on what it takes to run a practice of that size and what the
Mm.
challenges are at that level.
Yep.
You've definitely hit on, when you grow a staff, that becomes a much bigger piece of that puzzle is managing people concerns and people problems.
There was
Yeah.
no drama in that practice, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, to continue forward, the practice I bought, solo doc, we've the staff is quite a bit smaller, and the drama proportionately is much smaller as well. That's
Well,
just how it
there's
goes when you have multiple people, multiple personalities.
the nice part too is you have no misconception, you have no romanticization. I couldn't even say that word of what it really looks like to
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
practice of that size. You're like,
yeah,
it's doable.
yeah,
This is what it feels like. This is what it looks like. Maybe I can do it better. But at the end of the day, when you have that many people, it's the reality. And if you're okay with that kind of stress,
yeah,
there's awesome opportunities there. If you're not
for
okay
sure.
with that kind of stress, then you actually I think one of the best parts about it is you feel good not doing it. You're like,
Yeah,
this isn't for me, and I'm okay with that. I really like having a smaller team. I really like, and for me, that's what building a 35 office DSO was like. I don't cope with this kind of stress well, and that's really valuable information for me. Of like large teams, people who are really unhappy with the situation with you, just because you can't make everyone happy. It's literally impossible. So okay, so you knew I want maybe something a little more up my alley on that
sure.
clinical entrepreneur spectrum. So, what was the date that you really started, or year that you earnestly started searching for a practice?
Um, so I started looking probably, and I'm gonna get my timelines mixed up. Things have been so chaotic, but I started looking about a year out from when I ended up buying. That's
Okay.
about how long it took. And I've been in practice ownership for about a year and a half, so let's call it 2.5 years ago.
Okay. And we're recording this in May of 2025. So, like beginning of 2023, somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
I remember it was around holiday time, so it was, December, January, when I started looking. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I want to point something out here, and not to like in a negative way at all.
Hmm.
You're a 2017 grad,
Hmm.
and you came to our earliest ABPM event.
Yeah.
Um, and so sometimes I feel like people feel bad if they're not going straight into ownership out of dental school.
Yeah.
I don't know. Give someone a word who is like feeling it's only shared practices listeners. Honestly, it's like
Yeah.
normal dentists aren't thinking that, but if someone's listening to the show, they might be like,
Yeah.
I'm behind if I haven't bought 3 practices by the time I'm 3 years out of dental school.
Yeah, I think I do have a bit of perspective to share there. One of the I think advantages of having waited so long is it definitely took a lot of the administrative stress off while I was growing clinically, to whereas now I feel clinically pretty mature. So my day-to-day stresses in the practice are not both, learning to do bigger treatment or even just be predictable with bread and butter stuff, paired with all of the administrative, hey, this is a new job, I'm learning how to run this practice. I was able to kind of in my career segment those two things. And I also think in associateship, you're taking business lessons. If your eyes are open and you're looking around, you're learning something about your future business or how you want to structure it. Um, and I definitely saw myself in practice ownership sooner than I ended up being in practice ownership, but I don't regret it one bit.
Yeah, and, I think the timing is everything, and there will always be practices to buy. There will always be opportunities for ownership. Recently, I talked with a couple who they had 2 practices, they've sold them, they've moved to Florida, and now they're associates, and they love it for this season where their kids are at, and, like, they're like, "We are not those associates who are like, I would be doing this better if I was in charge." And in fact, they're like, we're just so grateful the owner is handling things. They're doing a good
Yeah.
job. So there's a really good relationship there. Um, Especially, going back to your situation, especially if you can like stockpile a little bit of cash over time in preparation, the stress of practice ownership early on, if you've got the difference between having like 30,000 in the bank and the bank barely lent you the loan for your practice and having 100 plus, and maybe you've got some retirement liquid,
Yep.
post tax retirement savings that you could access if you needed to, liquidity in different places. I think that's something people can really focus on as a thing they're preparing for themselves for ownership over time, even if they can't find it right away or they're just like, you know what, I'm not quite ready yet.
No, 100%. Starting up the practice, or really, so I was in a situation where I was acquiring a practice, but there were a lot of things that needed to be updated, a lot of lessons to be learned on the administrative side that, the cash flow didn't, carry straight over to when I took over. You're going through the stress of recredentialing and renegotiating with all your insurances, uh, teaching your front office staff how to talk to people through that. Hey, we're out of network transition.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of ongoing stress, and perhaps like we saw a dip not in production but in cash flow in my first couple months due to kind of some of those insurance details and having liquidity, having savings, being again a little more mature financially definitely helped me weather that storm from a financial stress perspective.
Absolutely. No, that's really good to hear. So let's get into the nitty-gritty on the practice search. So,
Sure.
you were looking, what was your ideal number of operatories? What size of practice were you trying to buy?
Um, so the end goal here is to go to a group or
Cool.
mega group size.
Okay.
I was kind of looking less for operatories and more for opportunity. Can I say that?
Okay.
Uh, so I was
You're looking for
looking,
upside. You're looking for ready to grow.
yeah, I'm looking for areas with good demographics and not a ton of dentists, an area
Cool.
that's going to be easy to bring in a lot of new patients at the time that we're ready to grow. When I found my practice, or the practice that I ended up purchasing, I had looked through a bunch in the Pittsburgh region. This one had the best cash flow to sort of immediately step into. Uh, Honestly, is from a personal perspective, my cost of living was increasing as we were having children.
Yeah.
So one of the important factors from me was that I could step into a practice that was already kind of profitable enough to sustain my living costs. Um, it's a smaller practice than I intend to be at in a couple years, but it's in a great area. It's cash flowing nicely. I'm basically taking a couple years to grow the practice at kind of a super solo
Hmm.
model prior to transitioning into hopefully a bigger space and bringing on associates.
Cool. Well, I actually really love the maturity of what you both want and your timeline and what you were looking for. So, we talk a lot about these practices that are ready to grow, that have like low hanging fruit. They've got like patients you can reactivate, they've got space you can expand into. Um, but the key there is if you can't get new patients, then you can never really go beyond that initial hit. You need to be able to, if you want to grow to from 1 to 2 to 3 plus doctors, you need new patient growth. And solving for that, almost over solving for space and immediate opportunity, is a very long-term perspective to have. And I feel like takes some maturity and some patience in like, okay, I need cash flow now, which allows you to reinvest, which allows you to market, which allows you to, you know, have the breathing room to grow. And I need the eventual demographics. And in between, if I don't have the ops yet, if I don't have the immediate opportunities, we can get there eventually.
Yeah, it is kind of walking that line of patience, calibrated with kind of again, it's like, your business life when you buy a practice becomes your personal life as
Mm.
well. Your business finances, your personal finances become so intimately interlinked. The success of your business is funding you in your life that for those purposes, de-risking and having some patience has been a path that's worked well for me in my life. But the other side of that coin is I'm excited to grow, and it's hard to hold off and not just go for the big immediate thing, the big immediate build out, the tons of ops, and just
Yeah.
fill it as fast as I can. So it's just walking that line, trying to enjoy the journey while you're doing it.
Well, tell us about the anatomy of this practice that you found. Like, how
Sure.
sure were you? Like, okay, tell us number of ops, the
Sure.
collections, if you're comfortable, the purchase price,
Yeah.
and then the did you instantly know? Was it love at first sight?
Yeah. So there's five ops. Purchase price was 950
Okay.
with working capital and everything. The practice was doing before I came on 1.2.
Oh, great.
Um, yeah, the seller stayed on for the first year,
Cool.
and we did 1.5 that first year. He is transitioned out. We're on track this year, which is going to be our second full year for in the 1.3 to 1.4 range. We're collecting a bit over that simply because we've you know got some of our AR processes in order. So we're working on collecting a bunch of uh, basically owed bills, owed insurance money. So that's been pleasant this year. Uh, but when I found the practice, a couple things sort of sang to me. One was, its collections to overhead percentage was pretty favorable. There was a lot of long-term staff, and again, it was in an area where I did that classic license search of everybody in sort of the geographic range to see like, okay, how many people are in this area. It was a fair number, but also a fair number who are about to retire. So just knowing that the long-term play was going to be on building a patient base, growing by patient volume, that was something that I saw as favorable as well.
Beautiful. I love this is the like this is back to like the George like map on the wall with like
Yeah,
pins
yeah,
and radiuses and red string tied between them all, and you're like a crazy person, but you're like,
yeah.
I think I think there's some real opportunity. I love the fact that you dove in that deep yourself to understand this area because there's a few things about favorable dentist to patient or population ratio. That's great, pretty self-explanatory. If you can get above 2,000, there's great opportunities there. But it's even better if the dentists that are there are older for two reasons. Number one, their practices are usually declining and they're not marketing, or they are marketing and they suck at it. So you can just outperform people and take the new patients that would have potentially gone to their practice. And then number two, the possibility for chart acquisition for because one of your problems right now is, okay, I have the demographics to grow, but I don't have the space to grow and have a second
Yeah.
doctor. If
Yeah.
you could acquire a practice with more ops and do a chart merger and it wasn't too far away, that is, the stars have to align, but that's not outside of the realm of possibility.
For sure. And that is so I knew it going in. I was kind of open-eyed about it that our bottleneck is always going to be our operatory size. We fortunately, while the other doctor was still practicing, we're able to grow our practice to about 2,100 active patients.
Cool.
That's seen within the last 18 months. I think it's like 2,000 seen within the last year, which is
Amazing.
very, it feels like we're bursting at the seams
That's a healthy
with
practice.
it is. So it's kind of a shame that I don't have the square footage right now to sort of maximize that and grow it even further. But it is a luxury in ways that it's opening up some doors for potentially, in the meantime, while we're in this limited footprint, to increase our profit per patient by
Yep.
considering what insurances we're taking.
Yep.
Um, so it's a good problem to have.
That's great. That's fantastic. Well, tell me about BRS, about, working with someone to pull the trigger on this practice. Like you're a sophisticated buyer, and this is the advantage of taking ABPM back when it first launched, is that, and probably listening to the podcast, I don't know, back then, currently,
Yeah.
um, you really start to understand the equation before you walk in and buy something. Um, and it's funny to see people like Andrew Klingon, who is a host on the show. I'm going to have an update episode with him soon. He he signed up for BRS and paid Suzanne. And honestly, if I bought a practice down the street here in Brownsburg, Indiana, I would ask Suzanne, can you please run an evaluation on
Yeah.
this? So tell me about that decision and what you got out of that.
I think buyer representation and coaching have kind of the same advantage. As much as you think you carry emotion into these decisions with you, and having a third party who is less attached and can see things with clearer eyes is a huge benefit of having buyer representation and doing coaching. It's nice, even if you think and you think you have the equation solved, to have somebody else as a sounding board to help you make decisions, or even just to alert you to things that you thought you knew, but you didn't turn that stone over and you go, oh, gee, I don't think I would have found that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, this is why I have a financial advisor, is that,
Yeah,
like, yes, I know a lot about finances. Money is a highly emotional thing. And being able to, like, is my plan good? Am I crazy? This opportunity's come up. I'm pulling the trigger on it. Um, Having that objective third party that just has such a bigger data set than you gives you confidence, clarity, and an outside perspective. So you're like, I need, the emotion. I don't think I've heard people bring that up in particular. Is that, like, the recognition that this we're investing so much in this one decision, not just financially, but our time, our energy, our identity. We even invest a lot of our identity into, like, how successful our practice is and how it does relative to other practices. And it's, the FOMO is worse if you listen to shared practices. And so, and it's scary. It's hard. It's hard to pull the trigger. So having the non-emotional support and sometimes the therapy to walk you off the cliff emotionally of anything that does crop up in the process is really invaluable because otherwise you get mad at the seller for like being a little weird about certain things in the deal and about the transition, and it's just your own emotions can either convince you to buy the wrong practice, can scare you off from the right practice, can sabotage the deal in and of itself, and can set you up for a real struggle with the current team, the current systems, the current patients, the seller that's outbound. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I don't think we've ever talked about that before.
Yeah, I know I could have gotten myself excited about a lot of practices that I shouldn't have got excited about. So it is just being an optimistic type of person, and having been excited to get into practice ownership. It's nice to have somebody else there telling you, "Hey, you're not crazy. This is something to be excited about."
And that's a good feeling. Like,
Yeah, totally.
that's a really good feeling to be like, I think this is good. Because there's also part of practice ownership is developing a gut sense of decision making as a business owner. And there's this combination of a gut sense as well as the validation of a decision financially and with metrics. And you need both. You can't be someone who's like, I don't do anything unless I have numbers to prove it, because there's cliffs you have to jump off
Yep.
in business ownership. And but to like have your first move going into practice ownership of like, okay, I think this is what I want. I've done the research. I've found this. Like, this looks really good. And have someone say, yeah. And then you're like, you have even more confidence. And whatever your next move is, which it sounds like coaching, it's really good that you also shared you had initial growth with that associate, and then you had to scale back as you lost the seller doc.
Yeah.
That is the reality of when you lose a producer and you have that big of a patient base. There's just only so much dentistry you can do. And
Yeah.
so many times on the podcast we talk about people who grow X amount in their first year or their second year, and it's like, yeah, it actually makes sense why I went from 1.5 to maybe 1.3 or wherever this year will end up.
Yeah.
But you've got that perspective to not be
Yeah.
emotional about it.
Yeah. It's we kind of I entered the practice in sort of like an ugly duckling phase of a group. And then by the end of that first year, we're kind of both busy in a group setting. And then I scaled back down to super solo when the seller doc retired. And speaking of, benefits of coaching and being a part of the shared practices ecosystem, and kind of having some of that philosophy ingrained, is it's definitely a great framework to help me sort of organize and like you're saying, have expectations, knowing, okay, you know what, I've shifted between practice models. It's not surprising that top line revenue's gone down. But one of the benefits was of going down an associate, our overhead went down with it. So, the 1.5, I was taking home less than am going to this year at 1.3
So you were taking home less at 1.5 than you will be at 1.3.
because I was paying my associate.
Right. But you're paying the other doctor. So
Yeah,
like you're still coming out ahead. And
yeah,
if you can do more on less patients, and between fees, insurance reimbursements, productivity per patient, productivity per appointment, like that's exactly what you want. And sometimes the goal could be I want to do the least amount of dentistry and take the most home. And there is a sweet spot to that. And
yeah,
if you're in the phase where you can't actively grow today, that is a great place to live in because it allows you to stockpile and get ready for future opportunities. It allows you to optimize. It allows you to continue to tweak and set yourself up for success. So I'm really excited for what you have in front of you and to figure out when the right moment is for expanding operatories and see what that timeline looks like for you.
yeah. No, it also part of the patience, the long-term plan of this is just what you've mentioned. I'm now in a stage where I'm just thinking about that next thing, and I'm able to stockpile some cash to open up opportunities for investing in real estate, for the purchase of the next practice, for being able to um, step out on a limb a little bit more, just as we were talking about, having built up some financial maturity, it decreases the amount of stress when you go into business ownership. Having some financial maturity and building liquidity in this phase, I think will help de-stress or de-risk, taking that next step into a potentially bigger space, um, and potentially taking on, more overhead while you're growing patient base for that new associate. There's um, probably going to be a ripple there, where your take home takes a dip before it comes back up.
Yep.
And having some liquidity, I think, is definitely going to help reduce the amount of stress that I feel during that time.
Cool. Um, well, the one thing I haven't asked you about is challenges. I guess you talked about insurance, navigating
Yeah.
that window of we're out of network, we're going in network, and the verbiage and the upset patients and the team managing the team's emotion around this.
Yep.
Because I've been through that before. What other major challenges did you have in this first year that you were able to work through?
Yeah, so something that was a reality of taking over an older practice is just updating. We were paper charts, paper
Oh,
ledger, paper
oh,
schedule.
oh,
Uh, yeah, so it was updating our server, getting new computers, getting open dental, things of that nature. It was a bit of a task to get up and running and get everybody used to sort of bringing the practice into the 21st century, getting text reminders, text to pay, onboarding a lot of sort of front office technology, not just intraoral scanning, 3D printing, CBCT. Like that's coming, and it's to an extent we're intraoral scanning. We have other things coming down the line, but just the process of upgrading has taken a lot of time and attention.
yeah. No, that definitely that's a process, and hopefully your team is grateful to go digital, and totally on board with it.
Yeah, I've been blessed with a good team that has been open to the change and appreciative of it, frankly.
Good.
I think a lot of the things that have been done, it's always difficult in the moment when you're asking everybody to learn open dental at once, but 2, 3 weeks go by and they go, oh, this is way easier than what we were trying to do, writing in our appointment book.
100%. No, that's awesome. Well, man, this has been. I've loved to hear your journey, and I love your perspective and the nuances of the ups and downs and the before and your thought process and where you're going. Um, what advice would you give to someone who's, they're in that pre-owner phase and they feel like they can't find something to buy? And that guy that I talked with this morning who is nervous because he feels overwhelmed looking at the numbers and trying to figure out what's right and what's the decision to go for. What would you tell to that person?
Yeah, I think there's some themes of our discussion today is just having that sort of patience, and always be working on yourself, investing in yourself. Just because you're not in a practice owned by you doesn't mean you can't grow your clinical skill set so you're a better producer in that practice when you get it. Just because you're not in your practice yet doesn't mean you can't go take a business ownership course and learn some principles that you can then apply in the future. There's always time and space to work for yourself, and just have patience for when the right thing arrives. I fortunately, have been in a situation where I've been well supported the whole way, through
Mhm.
buyer's representation and through coaching, um, and they haven't steered me wrong. I feel grateful to be where I am at today. Um, but yeah, support,
That's
resilience, patience.
That's awesome. I love hearing that, and I appreciate you being willing to share your journey because it really does help. It pays it forward. And so, anyone listening, if you're in that phase of looking for a practice or you're trying to grow a practice, go on sharedpractices.com, reach out. We'll take a look at your practice. It will give you an initial look. We're not even gonna, twist your arm to move forward, but just knowing, like, okay, this is worth doing the due diligence and I've got guidance through this most important. It's just like other than getting married, like and life decisions that are actually, real life, this just ripples. This one decision ripples into the rest of your career, what's possible for your family, your stress levels, which you bring home. Um, all of that is so intimately tied up into which practice did I buy, and how much ahead or behind am I on profitability and team and organization and possibility. So you've made a lot of patient, wise decisions, and it's just cool to hear that perspective. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I definitely feel like I'm still in that journey. I'm still learning things every day. I'm excited to see where we can go.
Good, we all are. No, I'm right there with you. So, well, perfect. Thank you everyone who's been listening, and thank you for being on here, Brian. We'll talk to you next time on the Shared Practices podcast.